A formal invitation to dinner was meant to be my public shaming, orchestrated by the family who deemed me a disappointment. What they didn't realize was that I'd brought my credit card, ready to settle every score. The text message from my mother arrived on a Tuesday, and it was so uncharacteristically formal that I had to read it twice. "Darling, your father and I would be delighted if you would join us, Leo and Chloe, for dinner this Saturday. 8 p.m. at Aurelia. Dress code is formal, let me know." No emojis, no typos, no follow-up message saying, "Oops, sent to wrong person, LOL." This was a calculated, formal invitation. Aurelia wasn't just a restaurant, it was the restaurant. The kind of place where the wine list was thicker than my college textbooks, and a single appetizer cost more than my weekly groceries. It was my parents' natural habitat, a world of quiet wealth and unspoken rules that I had spent the last 10 years trying to escape. My relationship with my family is complicated. I'm the artistic one, which in their language is code for the disappointment. My older brother, Leo, is the golden child. He went to law school, married his college sweetheart, Chloe, a woman who looks like she was sculpted from ivory and disapproval, and now works alongside my father at his corporate firm. They live in a sprawling house in the suburbs, drive sensible luxury cars, and produce grandchildren who are already on the wait list for the right preschools. Me? I'm a freelance graphic designer. I live in a downtown loft apartment I bought with my own money. I have tattoos my mother pretends not to see, and my love life is a rotating cast of characters they've never bothered to learn the names of. To them, my success isn't real. It's a hobby that somehow pays my mortgage. Every family dinner felt less like a gathering and more like a performance review where I was perpetually failing to meet expectations. So, this invitation to Aurelia felt different. It felt like an olive branch. Maybe they'd finally seen the feature on my design firm in that online magazine. Maybe they were finally ready to acknowledge that I was a successful, independent adult on my own terms. A sliver of hope, treacherous and foolish, lodged itself in my chest. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to be excited. I spent a ridiculous amount of money on a new dress, a sleek emerald green silk number that was both elegant and undeniably me. I had my hair professionally styled. I wanted to walk into that restaurant not as the rebellious daughter, but as their equal. On Saturday night, I arrived right at 8. The valet whisked my car away, and I pushed through the heavy, ornate doors into a world of low lighting, hushed conversations, and the delicate clinking of crystal. I spotted them immediately, seated at a prime table in the center of the opulent dining room. My father looking distinguished in a tailored suit, my mother dripping with understated diamonds, and Leo and Chloe looking like a photoshopped ad for generational wealth. My heart did a little nervous flutter. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, and walked towards them, a bright, genuine smile on my face. "You made it!" my mother chirped, her eyes sweeping over my dress. "What a vibrant color, dear." Chloe offered a tight-lipped smile. "It's very creative," she added, and I knew it wasn't a compliment. My father just grunted a hello, already engrossed in the wine list. Leo gave me a quick, almost apologetic hug, the usual awkward dance of pleasantries. The host, a tall man with an impossibly straight back, glided over. "Your table is ready," he said to my father. They all began to stand up. I moved to follow, but the host subtly put a hand out to stop me. I looked at him, confused, then back at my family, who were being led away. They were walking towards a large, round table, beautifully set with 5-star everything, except it was only set for 4. My stomach turned to ice. 4 chairs, 4 wine glasses, 4 pristine folded napkins. I watched, frozen in place, as my mother, father, brother, and sister-in-law all took their seats. They were laughing about something, their heads close together, completely oblivious to me standing there, stranded in the middle of the restaurant. My mother finally seemed to remember I existed. She looked over, her smile bright and brittle. It was the same smile she used when she had to deliver bad news she was secretly thrilled about. She gestured not towards their table, but to a small, lonely-looking square table tucked away in a corner, right next to the swinging doors of the kitchen. "Oh, honey, there you are," she called out, her voice loud enough for the nearby tables to turn and look. There was a little mix-up with the reservation. They could only seat 4 at the main table. But don't you worry one bit. We got a lovely spot for you right over there. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the sad little table, the outcast table. "It's perfect. You can keep an eye on things for us." I stood there for what felt like an eternity, a statue in emerald silk, as the low hum of the restaurant seemed to amplify into a deafening roar. Every pair of eyes felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. I could feel the pity, the curiosity, the faint, smug amusement from the other diners. This was better than dinner theater for them. I looked at my family. My mother was already chatting with Chloe. My father was swirling his wine. Leo was pointedly staring at his bread plate. They had already moved on. I was a problem solved, an inconvenient piece of luggage stowed away. A part of me, the part that had bought the dress and held on to that foolish hope, wanted to scream, to flip a table over, to march out and never look back. But another, deeper part of me, the part that had been trained and conditioned by years of this subtle psychological warfare, knew that was exactly what they wanted. They wanted a scene. They wanted me to be the emotional, unstable one, reinforcing their narrative. So I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I smiled. It was a brittle, sharp-edged thing, but it was a smile. I gave a tiny, theatrical nod to my mother, as if to say, "Oh, you, such a funny mix-up," and began the long walk of shame to my corner table. The journey felt like miles, past tables of happy couples, laughing friends, families that actually sat together. With every step, the scent of perfume and expensive leather faded, replaced by the rhythmic whoosh of the kitchen doors and the faint, jarring clatter of pans. My table was small, wobbly, and had a tragic single rose in a tiny vase. As I sat, the swinging door next to me burst open, and a frazzled busboy hurried past with a stack of dirty dishes. This was my view. This was my 5-star experience. A waiter, young and nervous, appeared at my side. "Ma'am," he began, avoiding my eyes, "can I get you a drink menu?" "I'll have a glass of the same Cabernet my father is having," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the acid churning in my stomach. He scurried off. From my vantage point, I had a perfect panoramic view of my family's table. I watched as the sommelier poured their wine. I watched as they laughed at one of my father's dry jokes. They were a perfect portrait of success and unity, and I was the smudge on the lens, relegated to the margins. My waiter returned, not with a wine list, but with my single glass of wine and something else. It was a smaller, folded menu, decorated with cartoon animals. He placed it on the table with an apologetic wince. "Your mother," he mumbled, "she said to give you this. She thought you might prefer it." I stared at it. It was a children's menu. Chicken fingers, macaroni and cheese, a wacky worm dessert made of gummy worms and ice cream. The sheer calculated cruelty of it knocked the breath out of me. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't an accident. This was a message, delivered with the precision of a sniper's bullet. You are a child. You do not belong at the adult table. I didn't even have time to react before my mother's voice sailed across the room again. The chicken fingers here are divine, darling. We used to get them for you and Leo all the time, remember? Her voice was saccharine sweet, but her eyes were cold, triumphant. She had me pinned. Chloe smirked into her wine glass. My brother, my own brother, refused to meet my gaze. He just took a large gulp of wine, his knuckles white around the stem. I sat there, staring at the cartoon lion on the menu, my expensive dress feeling like a costume for a play I had completely misunderstood. The waiter came back. "Have you decided?" he asked softly. Before I could speak, my mother called out again, "She'll have the chicken fingers and a Shirley Temple. It's her favorite." The final nail in the coffin. They were not just seating me separately, they were curating my entire experience of humiliation. My food arrived on a bright plastic plate, a stark contrast to the fine china at their table. I picked at a lukewarm French fry as their appetizers arrived, oysters and foie gras. I sipped my disgustingly sweet Shirley Temple while they moved on to the main course lobster for my mother, a massive steak for my father, and then my father stood up. He tapped his crystal glass with a spoon, the clear, high-pitched ring silencing the entire restaurant. Everyone turned to look. This was it, the reason for the dinner, the purpose of my public execution. "I'd like to make an announcement," he boomed, his voice filled with patriarchal authority. "As you all know, the firm has had its most successful year to date," he beamed at Leo, who sat up a little straighter. "And we are expanding. We're launching a new creative division, a venture that requires a fresh, modern perspective." My heart, against all logic, gave a tiny, pathetic leap. A creative division. Was this for me? Was this whole twisted charade some kind of bizarre test? He let the suspense hang in the air for a moment, his gaze sweeping the room before it landed with crushing intensity right on me. He smiled, a cold, predatory smile that didn't reach his eyes. But to lead it, we need someone who understands the value of family, of tradition, and of knowing one's place in the hierarchy. This dinner was a test, and I must say, I'm delighted you decided to join us for it. The silence in the room was thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant clatter from the kitchen. My father's words hung in the air, a declaration of war disguised as a business announcement, a test. This whole elaborate, cruel performance was a test, and the objective was to see if I had learned to accept my place in the corner on a wobbly chair with a children's menu. I looked at his face, flushed with power and the expensive wine. He was enjoying this. He was savoring every second of my public humiliation. The little sliver of hope I'd harbored died a quick, violent death, replaced by something cold and hard and sharp. "And so," he continued, his voice resonating with theatrical gravitas, "it gives me immense pleasure to announce that the new head of our creative division will be someone whose taste, dedication, and unerring commitment to the family aesthetic is beyond reproach." He turned, his smile widening, and placed a hand on Chloe's shoulder. "My daughter-in-law, Chloe!" A smattering of confused, polite applause rippled through the nearby tables. Chloe, my sister-in-law, whose most significant creative contribution to the world was color-coordinating her bookshelf by spine, looked momentarily stunned, then preened under the attention. Her face settled into a mask of smug victory. She had won. She had passed the test by simply being herself, bland, obedient, and utterly devoid of an original thought. My mother reached across the table to squeeze Chloe's hand, tears of joy welling in her eyes. "Oh, darling, we are so proud of you. I knew your eye for design was special," she gushed. Leo raised his glass, the perfect, dutiful son and husband. "To Chloe," he said, his voice hollow. This was it. This was the checkmate. They had not only denied my entire career and identity, but they had also handed a mockery of it to the person who represented everything I stood against. I was supposed to break now. I was supposed to cry, to yell, to prove them right about me being too emotional, too unstable for the real world. I felt my own smile stretch across my face. It wasn't the brittle, forced one from before. This one was different. It was genuine. It was the smile of someone who had just been handed a get-out-of-jail-free card. I picked up my Shirley Temple, the cherry at the bottom glowing like a hot coal. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up. The movement drew every eye back to me, the forgotten footnote in the corner. My family froze, their triumphant tableau interrupted. My father's smile faltered. He expected tears. He was not prepared for this. I held my childish drink aloft. "A toast," I announced, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily across the suddenly silent dining room. "To Chloe." I turned my gaze directly to her and watched the color drain from her face. On her spectacular and, I must say, incredibly well-deserved promotion. I can't think of anyone whose extensive experience in curating beige interiors has better prepared them to lead a dynamic, forward-thinking, creative division. The world of corporate branding will surely be revolutionized by your deep understanding of taupe. A few nervous titters came from the other tables. I turned to my mother. "And to Mother and Father," I continued, the smile never leaving my face, "for this truly unforgettable dinner, and for teaching me such an invaluable lesson tonight about family, tradition, and the profound importance of knowing one's place." I paused, letting the words sink in, letting the double meaning hang in the air like poison gas. "You've made things clearer for me than they have ever been before." I took a delicate sip of the Shirley Temple. Then, with a flourish, I picked up a single perfect chicken finger from my plastic plate. I held it up. And finally, a toast to the chicken fingers. Truly divine. I took a crisp, deliberate bite, chewing slowly as I held my father's furious gaze. The silence was absolute. My father's face was a thundercloud. My mother looked like she'd swallowed a wasp. Leo looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. I placed the half-eaten chicken finger back on the plate, dabbed my lips with the paper napkin, and let it fall to the table. "Well," I said brightly, "I'm afraid I must be going. I have a very early morning with my hobby." I turned and began to walk towards the exit, not with the hurried shame of an outcast, but with the measured, confident stride of a queen, leaving a tedious court. I could feel their collective stare burning into my back. I could feel the shocked whispers of the other patrons. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked straight to the host stand at the entrance, where the impossibly tall man was trying his best to look busy. I pulled my wallet out of my clutch. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm. "I'd like to settle my bill." He fumbled for the receipt. "Of course, ma'am. For the kids' meal?" "That's the one," I said, handing him my black Amex. He ran the card. As he handed it back, I leaned in slightly. "One more thing," I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, but still loud enough for the couple at the nearest table to hear. "That table in the center, the party of 4, I want their bill." The host's eyes widened in shock. "Ma'am, their bill it's quite substantial." I gave him a cool smile. "I'm aware. Put all of it on my card, and please add a 25% tip for the staff. They've had to put up with quite a lot tonight." He stared at me, speechless, as he processed the transaction. With the receipt signed and the finality of the act settling in, I turned my gaze back towards my family's table. They were all watching me, a mixture of fury and utter confusion on their faces. They couldn't understand what I was doing. I took the customer copy of the massive receipt, folded it neatly, and started walking, not towards the door, but directly towards them. The walk back to their table was the most powerful I had ever felt in my life. The hunter had become the prey, and the entire ecosystem of the restaurant had shifted. They watched my approach, their celebratory mood shattered, replaced by a tense, wary silence. I was no longer the banished child. I was an unpredictable force, and they had no idea what I was going to do next. I savored the fear in my mother's eyes, the barely leashed fury in my father's, the utter bewilderment on Chloe's face. Leo just looked exhausted, like a man who had been fighting a losing battle for years and had finally surrendered. I stopped at the edge of their table, the grand centerpiece of flowers suddenly looking garish and absurd. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I spoke in a calm, almost conversational tone that was somehow more chilling than a shout. "I believe this is yours," I said, and placed the folded receipt on the pristine white tablecloth, right next to my father's half-full glass of Cabernet. He stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. "What is the meaning of this?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "It's the bill, Father. For everything," I said, gesturing around the table with a sweep of my hand. "The lobster, the steak, the multiple bottles of obscenely expensive wine. Oh, and my chicken fingers. I decided to treat you." My mother gasped, a hand flying to her pearls. "You can consider it a parting gift. Or perhaps," I added, my voice dropping an octave, "a severance package." The word hung there, sharp and final. Severance. "Don't be ridiculous," my father spat, his composure finally cracking. "You are not severing anything. You are a part of this family." "Am I?" I let out a soft, genuine laugh. It was a sound of pure liberation. "That's news to me." Because from where I was sitting tonight, right next to the swinging kitchen doors, with a children's menu, it seemed very clear that I am not a part of this family. I'm an accessory you bring out when you want to feel magnanimous, or a punching bag when you need to make a point. I'm the before picture you use to make Chloe's after look so much better. I met Chloe's shocked gaze. "No offense, darling. I'm sure your taupe revolution will be televised." I turned my attention back to my father. "This test you orchestrated tonight, you're right. It was illuminating. It taught me that my place is not here. My place is not begging for scraps of approval from the adult table. My place is out there, in a world that I built for myself, with my own money, on my own terms. The money," I tapped the receipt with a fingernail, "that just paid for your 5-star power trip." His face was a mask of purple rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Grateful?" I cut him off, my voice like ice. "What exactly should I be grateful for? For a lifetime of being told my passion is a hobby? For being constantly compared to a brother who did nothing but follow the path you laid out for him? For an invitation to my own public shaming? No, I think I'm done with gratitude." I looked at Leo, whose eyes were finally fixed on me, filled with a familiar, gut-wrenching mix of pity and shame. "And you," I said, my voice softening slightly, "I feel sorry for you, Leo. You got the seat at the table, but you're wearing a collar, and the leash is so short you can't even stand up for your own sister." He flinched as if I'd slapped him, and finally looked down at the table, defeated. My work was done. The bomb had been detonated. I had taken their perfectly crafted narrative and rewritten the ending. I wasn't the tragic artist, the emotional mess. I was the benefactor, the one who paid the bill, the one with the real power. I gave them one last sweeping look, memorizing the shock and fury on their faces. It was the last time I ever intended to see them like this. "Enjoy your meal," I said, my smile returning, bright and final. "Chloe, I'll be sure to send you a list of graphic design freelancers. You're going to need them." And with that, I turned my back on them for the last time. I walked out of Aurelia, the hushed whispers of the other patrons a symphony at my back. I stepped out into the cool night air, which felt cleaner and fresher than any air I had ever breathed. The valet brought my car around, and as I slid into the driver's seat, I felt a decade of weight lift from my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt light. As I drove away, my phone buzzed incessantly, a string of furious texts from my father, a series of panicked missed calls from my mother, a single pathetic text from Leo that just said, "I'm sorry." I pulled over, read his message, and then did something I should have done years ago. I blocked all of their numbers. I drove home to my loft, to the life I had built, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of survival. The emerald dress went into a donation bag the next morning. It had served its purpose. It was armor for a battle I hadn't known I was going to fight, a battle I had finally, decisively won. The price of that dinner was astronomical, but the cost of my freedom, it was a bargain.